We brought it up in the Haggai episode, but I thought it was really interesting how much the Jews had changed between Babylon and the ones who are stayed behind in more or less Palestine, Israel, whatever you want to call it. It's so interesting that two groups would diverge so quickly, and I guess it's maybe the nature of who was taken and who stayed. Um, did it seem like a class issue between the? It sure seems like it was the higher class, the more educated class, the leadership class was taken into exile, and then it was the hoi polloi who stayed behind.
That certainly seems to be the case. I think in the past 50 years, they actually dug up some things in Babylonia, archaeological finds, which document several Judean merchant families from this period. So the Judeans had formed cohesive communities there. And if you're a merchant family, you're going to be part of the upper classes, aren't you? Whereas yet back home in Judea, I mean, they're called the people of the land, which seems to mean basically the peasants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Bible does in lots of ways in this, yeah. The guys who stayed behind, they're peasants. They're not really Judeans, right? They're the... Ugh. But now we're rich. We're coming back. And we're going to be the ones in charge. So there certainly seems to have been class distinctions.
And they seem to ride the wave of the Persian Empire and everything. They took advantage of everything that the Persians offered. Where if you take them in against like what the Greeks did, and the Greeks did not take advantage of everything that the Persian Empire had to offer.
Mm-hmm. I've always admired the Persians. I mean, as far as I can see, they are the first modern empire. They are an order of magnitude more sophisticated than the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Hittites before them. And their empire is an order of magnitude larger than any other previous ancient empire. I mean, the Persians, they invented a mail system. They built roads for communication. They had fairly sophisticated trading. It's like the Persian. It's like an industrial revolution in empires, sort of thing.
And I think they had the right idea of empire, probably of most empires that have come along in a long, long time, is do what you're going to do. As long as it doesn't bother us and you pay us,
yeah,
you can do what you want to do and do your own thing. And they did have, I believe they had some revolts in Egypt and, in the Greek and Greece and in but those were kind of in the extremes. Like any of their revolts were really from the extremes of the power base.
Yeah.
And those were probably the ones who didn't get the spoils of empire quite as much as the ones who were more central to the heartland.
Yeah. Yeah. The Persians seem to be remarkably unoppressive. I mean, the Assyrians and the Babylonians made a policy of deportation. And the Persians did the exact opposite. Go home. Be happy.
Yeah, it really seemed like it was only if you pushed against them, then you got it. So like with the Greeks and the Ionians, if you weren't going to play ball, then you were going to get, because that was kind of their racket, is you either play ball or we're not going to play ball with you. And that's what held the whole operation together.
And it seemed to work quite well for a couple of centuries.